40-year bull market trapped a generation. Then zero interest rate policy turned that trap into a desperate yield chase, transforming physical assets into mere instruments for generating return rather than true economic value. Class A office towers transitioned into mere bond proxies for yield-starved pension funds and sovereign wealth entities. This shift demonstrated how financial engineering decoupled the physical reality of property from its intrinsic worth. The peak arrived in 2019, marked by record low vacancy rates across major metropolitan areas. This environment signaled a dramatic change in the perceived risk associated with owning prime commercial real estate. Cap rates hit historic lows, pushing the market to unprecedented levels of valuation depression. This created an artificial environment where property prices seemed detached from actual operational cash flows. The securitization machine began churning out asset-backed securities through the CMBS process. These instruments were backed by trophy assets in New York, San Francisco, and London markets. These specialized tranches were rated AAA, creating a facade of absolute safety for institutional investors. The underlying risk of physical depreciation was systematically masked by complex financial layering. The dominant investment thesis shifted dramatically away from traditional metrics. Location became the single most powerful psychological anchor for all real estate decisions. The old metrics of price, terms, and cash flow were systematically replaced by this geographical obsession. This psychological repositioning allowed for massive speculative bubbles to inflate without critical scrutiny. This psychological shift created a foundation for the subsequent financial instability. Investors became entrenched in asset appreciation rather than fundamental risk assessment. The illusion of perpetual yield was built on deferred risk and engineered perception. It masked the true decay occurring beneath the surface of seemingly stable asset classes. The securitization machine was not just a mechanism. It was the engine driving this illusion of stability. It packaged risk and sold it back to the very institutions that created it. Trophy assets in prime locations served as the unshakable collateral for these high-risk structures. Their perceived permanence was used to justify exponential debt creation across the global financial system. The power of location became a weapon against traditional financial metrics. It allowed capital to flow based on perceived prestige rather than verifiable economic performance. A bustling New York City skyline hums under perpetual sunlight, its skyscrapers standing as silent monuments to an era where physical presence was synonymous with success. Yet beneath the glass facades, a quiet revolution was unfolding, one that would redefine the very purpose of these towering structures. In 2010, a young engineer in Silicon Valley began testing video conferencing tools that would one day make face-to-face meetings obsolete. No one listened because the real estate industry was built on the assumption that people would always need to be in the same room. By 2015, the technology had matured enough to make remote work not just possible, but increasingly efficient. Productivity metrics began to shift, yet no one in commercial real estate noticed, because the models were built on the assumption that density equaled success. Meanwhile, in Chicago, a construction crew poured the foundation for a new Class A office tower, financed with a 5-year loan. The bankers assumed the building would stabilize within that window, but no one considered the possibility that the demand for physical space would vanish before the loan matured. The banks, however, were not the only ones playing with fire. Basel III regulations had introduced new capital rules for high-volatility commercial real estate, or HVCRE, the unintended consequence. Banks could now stuff risky construction loans into the shadow banking system, where they would be repackaged as seemingly safe assets. In New York, WeWork's rapid expansion masked a growing problem. Master leases allowed the company to sublease spaces to tenants without revealing the true vacancy rates. The illusion of occupancy kept rents high, but the underlying demand had already begun to crumble. No one was paying attention until it was too late. Across the Atlantic, in London, a similar story unfolded. Nodal, another co-working giant, was using sublease arbitrage to keep their books looking healthy, but the reality was far more precarious. The true demand for office space was collapsing, and no one was willing to admit it. The financial models relied on the assumption that people would always need to be in the same place. But the technology was proving otherwise. Productivity was no longer tied to physical density. Yet the banks, the investors, and the developers all kept betting on the old rules. We upload videos like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Television. The duration mismatch was a ticking time bomb. Banks issued 5 to 7 year loans, assuming assets would stabilize within that window. But the reality was that commercial real estate often required 10 years or more to reach full occupancy and profitability. The gap between loan terms and stabilization periods was growing wider. Floating rate debt was being swapped to fixed, creating a false sense of security. The banks thought they were mitigating risk, but in reality, they were setting themselves up for a fall when interest rates eventually rose. The illusion of stability was built on sand. The co-working operators were the canaries in the coal mine. Their rapid expansion masked the true extent of the vacancy crisis. But the master leases and sublease arbitrage were nothing more than temporary band-aids on a festering wound. The rot was spreading, and no one was looking directly at it. The technology was there, the models were outdated, and the banks were playing with fire. The structural rot beneath the facade was silent. But it was real, and it was growing. The illusion of stability was about to shatter. The cracks were forming. No one could see them yet, but they were there, waiting to become chasms. March 2020, the world halts. A pandemic reshapes economies overnight. The Federal Reserve moves faster than ever before. Emergency tools deployed in record time. PPPLF, MMLF, PMCCF. 3 acronyms that would rewrite commercial real estate forever. These facilities weren't just loans. They guaranteed the liabilities of CRE lenders locking in debt. Banks could now extend maturities, delay the inevitable, pretend everything was fine. The CARES Act Section 4013, a loophole in the law, crafted for this moment. Troubled debt restructuring, TDR, was now off the table. Banks could modify loans without marking them down. Loan loss reserves froze at 2019 levels. Banks pretended nothing had changed. Amend and extend. The new mantra. Banks swapped floating rate debt for fixed. A temporary fix. Interest reserves were funded by new debt. A vicious cycle. More leverage, more risk. Covenant waivers became the norm. Equity kickers replaced hard terms. Hope over reality. Hope value appraisals kept collateral marks artificially high. Illusions became the new truth. Regional banks held 80% of CRE debt. The bag holders of last resort. Too big to fail banks offloaded risk. Syndication and CMBS spread the pain elsewhere. The masterstroke. Extend and pretend. A playbook written in ink and blood. The Fed's emergency tools bought time. But time was running out. The illusion of stability masked the rot beneath. Banks and investors played for time. Every extension delayed the reckoning. Every waiver postponed the inevitable collapse. The bill has arrived. $1. 5 trillion in commercial debt is coming due, and it's all underwater. This is the maturity wall. Between 2024 and 2026, trillions of dollars in commercial real estate loans are due. It's not a single event, but a slow-motion train wreck. A dimly lit boardroom in a midtown Manhattan skyscraper. A portfolio manager stares at a screen displaying a once-proud trophy asset now marked down by 70%. The screen flickers with red warnings. Negative leverage. Refinance denied. Equity call required. His fingers hover over the keyboard, contemplating the next move. The weight of the decision presses down like a physical force. The screen zooms in on a single line item. A senior loan valued at 60 cents on the dollar. The manager's breath catches as he realizes this isn't just a bad investment. It's a handshake deal. Someone is willing to take this asset at a steep discount, but only if they can control the terms. The screen flashes a warning. Asymmetric upside. The manager's phone buzzes with a call from a distressed debt fund manager. The voice on the other end is calm, almost amused. You know why we're calling, right? The screen behind him shifts to a montage of similar assets. Office towers, malls, hotels, all marked down to pennies on the dollar. The manager's jaw tightens. This isn't just a sale. It's a reset. The manager's eyes flick to a whiteboard covered in equations. Basis discipline is written in bold letters at the top. Below it, a series of calculations: replacement cost of the asset, 10-year treasury yield plus 300 basis points, and a stark comparison to the pro forma rents that once lured investors. The numbers don't lie. The market has changed forever. The camera pulls back to reveal a stack of treasury bills and short-duration bonds neatly arranged on the desk. The manager's hand hovers over them. A silent question hanging in the air. Why hold cash when the world is burning? The screen behind him flashes a headline. CRE collapse accelerates. The manager exhales slowly, understanding the strategy. The manager's phone rings again. This time, it's a call from a data center operator. The voice on the other end is urgent. We need capital, not for office buildings, for servers, for infrastructure. The future isn't in brick and mortar. It's in ones and zeros. The manager's eyes widen. This isn't just about survival. It's about reinvention. The manager's fingers fly across the keyboard as he pulls up a report on housing supply shortages. The numbers are staggering. Decades of underbuilding, a shortage of 1 million homes, and a growing demand that shows no signs of slowing. The screen flashes a graph showing a steady rise in housing prices. This isn't just a correction. He thinks, this is a realignment. A montage of images flashes across the screen. Solar farms stretching across the desert, wind turbines spinning against a clear blue sky, and a sleek, modern data center humming with activity. The manager's voiceover cuts in, low and measured. The CRE reset isn't just about losses. It's about redirecting capital. From zombie assets to the engines of tomorrow. From concrete to code. From stagnation to growth. The manager's hands grip the edge of his desk as he looks out the window at the city below. The skyline is dotted with cranes. But they're not building office towers. They're constructing something different. Something necessary. The camera lingers on the manager's face. A mix of determination and resolve. The repricing is painful. He thinks, but the lesson is clear. His phone buzzes once more. This time, it's a message from a colleague. Denial phase is over. Capitulation phase begins in 26. The manager nods, understanding the timeline. The screen behind him flashes a countdown clock. 2 years. He thinks, 2 years to prepare, 2 years to position, 2 years to profit from the chaos. The camera pulls back to reveal the manager's entire office. Now bathed in the glow of multiple screens, each one displays a different sector. Housing, data centers, renewable energy. The manager's voiceover, calm and resolute, fills the silence. The wealth lesson isn't about avoiding the storm. It's about learning to sail through it. And when the winds shift, to ride them. The final shot lingers on a single screen displaying the 10-year treasury yield plus 300 basis points. The camera zooms in on the numbers, settling on the final digit. The screen fades to black as the sound of a ship's horn echoes in the distance, signaling a new voyage. The final scene shows a montage of various real estate assets transitioning into modern infrastructure projects. An old office building being converted into residential units, solar panels being installed on a rooftop, and a data center humming with activity. The voiceover concludes with a powerful statement. The repricing is painful, but the lesson is clear. Adapt or perish. Hi there. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Tomorrow's video will reveal this secret. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Shushing face.